I always had this theory that if you want to move someone else as an artist, you yourself necessarily must have been deeply moved by what it is that you're writing. But you must keep exploiting that emotion in yourself over and over and over and over till you've become completely cold about it, or fairly cold. I mean, so that you no longer laugh, say, about whatever it is that made you laugh, or you don't weep over whatever it is that made you weep. You see it like it was some extraordinary specimen, but you know that it had that effect on you personally, so that you know that if you can reproduce it, you can make it have exactly the same effect on the on someone else.
I really think you've written a masterpiece here.
Thank you. You'll get a much better dedication. You said that sweet thing. Now, from Truman. You are, old boy, old boy. Here comes Karen Gunderson, the beautiful young interviewer from Newsweek magazine. Yeah, what you doing with that book I was going to give you? Or did he just give it to you? Huh?
Yeah, he gave it to me.
Oh, well, I was going to give you one myself.
You said the other day that Christmas memory was fact and the grass harp was
fantasy.
How would you call Other Voices, Other Rooms?
Oh, well, you see, that's really not a novel, it's a poem. Yeah, I think of that book as a poem. In its own way, with all its poetic symbolisms and... it's quite an accurate picture of what my psychological condition, so to say, was, or, progress. But not in any literal sense. But in a psychological sense, it's very accurate. It's almost a kind of reporting only. Poetic reporting.
Did you ever publish any fiction in the New Yorker?
No. An agent I had once did, without my knowing it, sent them a story of mine called House of Flowers. And they sent it back saying, this story is romantic in a way we are not. I always remember that. Story is romantic in a way we are not. There's critics that remarked about that there's such an extraordinary difference in the evolvements of my style, as though I was searching for a different voice. But that's not true. What happened was that when I first began to publish, I wrote in a certain sort of way, which was the direct outgrowth of a particular kind of sensibility and training. Later, my sensibility and my training and my goals changed in which directions I wanted to work. And I simplified my prose more and more and achieved my effects that I wanted to achieve in a much more simpler fashion. Much more complicated literarily, much more sophisticated, much more difficult to do. But the effect is a far greater simplicity. The music I heard is very simple, very direct. It was exactly that point that I evolved this new style. But I like the other style. I mean, but it belongs to a young writer, a very young writer, It belongs really to a sort of a poet who presently became a prose writer. I think that's the truth of that matter. This new adventure of mine, this experiment, is what I call the nonfiction novel. A nonfiction novel being a genre brought about by the synthesis of journalism with a fictional technique. In other words, the end result of it being this new book of mine, In Cold Blood. In Cold Blood is the story about the murder of a family in a small town in western Kansas. Mr. Herbert W. Clutter and his wife, Bonnie Clutter, and their 2 teenage children. This was an especially strange and brutal murder in 1959 in which the family was shotgunned to death for no apparent cause or motive whatever. I decided to follow this case from beginning to end, and did from the time that it, shortly after it occurred until the case was solved in the arrest of 2 young men, ex-convicts, who had murdered the family for reasons that become apparent in the book itself, robbery being the ostensible motive, but that's like saying, well, anyway, it's a Chinese box of motives, actually, but robbery's ostensibly the one. In Cold Blood is the story of these 6 people, the Clutters, who died together November 15th, 1959, and Perry Smith and Richard Hickok, who were hanged April 14th, 1965. And my book is the story of their lives and their deaths. It's a completely factual account, and every word in it is true and based on innumerable interviews with the people directly concerned over a period of 5 years.
Long Island looks like Kansas. It's so flat.
In fact, this looks more like Kansas than Kansas does. I like it out here better in the winter than in the summer. Over there, just beyond the moors, that's the ocean. Right down here is my studio.
It's a beautiful room.
What? Shall I start cooking our lunch? At least get it started.
What is a good example, Truman, in your work that we know of style?
In my work?
Yes, a good example. One that really explains it.
Or what I consider a good piece of writing?
Yes.
I think Christmas Memory is a piece of writing that has a kind of great professional style from beginning to end, I think. Or in Cold Blood in its entirety. But I think style applies to everything, don't you? Everything. I mean, the thing is to pursue excellence in all its forms, right? Clothes, food, pictures, rooms, decor, music, literature, art, oysters. You wouldn't want a rather good oyster, would you? A rather good oyster would be like a... get ptomaine from it. But yeah. You don't have to come rinse these yourself, because these are my Baccarat glasses, and that's perfection.
How did you happen to get started in this new style? The style of In Cold Blood?
My original interest in the whole thing was an aesthetic theory, the aesthetic theory of combining journalism with fictional technique. I mean, when I, for instance, started to write In Cold Blood, it wasn't because I was interested in a crime. I chose it because it happened to accommodate an aesthetic theory of mine.
What theory was that?
Simply can produce a work of art out of factual material that has the same impact that the most imaginative literature does. My point is that factual writing can reach the altitudes of poetry that poetry does. One can, and at the same time, it has this extraordinary extra dimension of being completely true. Because the truth of the matter is, most readers really read nonfiction. most serious readers. I think that the novel has been in a stagnant form for some time, which doesn't mean to say that I think the novel is dead. I don't, and I intend to pursue the form myself. I intend to write a straight novel again, but I also intend to write nonfiction novels. But at least I think In Cold Blood is an achievement of what I wanted to do, and will, to some extent, force recognition of this form.
What specifically are the fictional techniques that you brought to this form of writing?
Well, first of all, it's control over your material. I feel that all material, whatever your story is, has some central organic shape, just the way that an apple has a simple, organic, natural, perfect shape for it. I mean, can you imagine an apple looking differently than an apple, or tasting differently, or a pear? An apple is something that's been perfectly realized. It found its exactly right natural shape. Now, in all the material of art, there is some perfectly natural shape that is exactly, so to say, the apple of your story. And the problem is simply to find the apple inside of your material, or the pear, or the whatever it may be. That's what I call construction. Construction is finding the inevitable form of the story that you want to tell. And once the thing is constructed, then comes what is the actual writing of the thing itself. And that, of course, is either one has style or one doesn't, but style is oneself. It's something that you cannot learn. It's something that has to come from within you and bit by bit be arrived at, and it's simply there like the color of your eyes or the color of your hair, anything that's absolutely natural to yourself. This is a typical one of my notebooks. This is part of In Cold Blood. Actually, I do all my writing in longhand, and then I come up here to this little room where I do all my own typing. This is the picture that Carl Van Vechten took of me when I first came to New York.
Nice picture. Do you have any pictures of you on canvas, Truman?
This is outside the motel where I always lived there.
Wheatland's?
Yeah.
Motel?
Howdy. This is a picture of Perry, but these were taken the very day they were captured and brought to prison. They were taken during the course of my very first interview with him. There's Dick. Those eyes, that is the picture. But neither Dick's physique nor the inky gallery adorning it made as remarkable an impression as his face, which seemed composed of mismatching parts, the left side rather lower than the right, with the result that the lips were slightly aslant, the nose askew, and his eyes not only situated at uneven levels, but of uneven size, the left eye being truly serpentine, with a venomous, sickly blue squint that, although it was involuntarily acquired, seemed nevertheless to warn a bitter sediment at the bottom of his nature. But Perry had told him, the eye doesn't matter, because you have a wonderful smile, one of those smiles that really work. That's Dick beginning to sort of be charming. He's just about to turn on the charm, and he had considerable charm when he wanted to. That's Dick. You see the tattoos. Dick being thoughtful. Wait a minute. This is River Valley Farm, where the murders happened. Perry was
Perry is much better looking than I expected him to be.
Which do you think? That's the picture of Perry, I think, is the best one. Time rarely weighed upon him, for he had many methods of passing it, among them mirror gazing. Dick had once observed, every time you see a mirror, you go into a trance like he was looking at some gorgeous girl. I mean, my God, don't you ever get tired? Far from it. His own face enthralled him. Each angle of it induced a different impression. It was a changeling face, and mirror-guided experiments had taught him how to bring the changes, how to look now ominous, now impish, now soulful. A tilt of the head, a twist of the lips, and the corrupt gypsy became the gentle romantic. This is Dick being handcuffed after an interview with me. Every time, see, he would come to the room where we would have our interviews, and they would wait outside, and then when they'd take him out, they'd handcuff him. I was only allowed to see Perry and Dick at certain specific hours and under most terrific conditions. And it was a hell of a lot of work.
Truman, was it hard to get to know Dick and Perry?
Dick was very easy to get along with and easy to know because he was like somebody you would meet on a train who would just start up an instant conversation and wanted to tell you everything that ever happened to him. But Perry was a strange and difficult boy. But for the two, I certainly got, in the end, what I consider closer to him because he was so difficult to get close to. But we became very close to and very intimate sort of, intense sort of friendship. I don't know if friendship's exactly the word, but some kind of very intense relationship having to do with his total loneliness and my sort of feelings of pity for him and even a kind of affection. And of course, because of my work. He would sometimes say to me, I don't care what you write about me as long as it's true. If it isn't true, I'll kill you, and I mean that.
Truman, how did you get all the information to write a scene like the Coke bottle scene?
One day, well, very soon after I first began interviewing Perry and Dick, and they were separate, and they couldn't converse, and so everything they told me had to be true. That if one said something and the other said it, I knew it was true because they had no way of communicating. And both of them told me about picking up this little boy and his grandfather who was dying in Texas, and how they picked up all these Coke bottles and ginger ale bottles and cashed them in. And the moment they told it to me, it intrigued me terrifically. So I think we must have done that interview over a period of 2 years, at least 5 times. But I would never insist on any subject because then it would make them become self-conscious about it. So I'd have to wait 2 months, between having discussed it once, and I'd wait 2 months, and I'd say, oh, by the way, you remember about that old man and the boy? And then every time we would go through it again, and they would begin to elaborate on it more, and bit by bit I got it, everything I needed for it. Dick shifted gears. Suddenly, as the car began to move again, the boy hollered, hold it. Hopping out, he hurried along the edge of the road, stopped, stooped, picked up 1, 2, 3, 4 empty Coca-Cola bottles, ran back, and hopped in, happy and grinning. There's plenty of money in bottles, he said to Dick. Why, mister, if you was to drive kind of slow, I guarantee you we can pick us up a big piece of change. That's what me and Johnny been eating off, refund money. Dick was amused. He was also interested. And when next the boy commanded him to halt, he at once obeyed. The commands came so frequently that it took them an hour to travel 5 miles, but it was worth it. The kid had an honest-to-God genius for spotting amid the roadside rocks and grassy rubble and the brown glow of thrown-away beer bottles the emerald daubs that had once held 7-Up and Canada Dry. Perry soon developed his own personal gift for spying out bottles. At first, he merely indicated to the boy the whereabouts of his finds. He thought it was too undignified to scurry about collecting them himself. It was all pretty silly, just kid stuff. Nevertheless, the gang generated a treasure hunt excitement, and presently he too succumbed to the fun, the fervor of this quest for refundable empties. Dick too, but Dick was in dead earnest. Screwy as it seemed, maybe this was a way to make some money, or at any rate a few bucks. Lord knows he and Perry could use them. Their combined finances amounted at the moment to less than $5. You know what seemed to me so extraordinary about the scene was that it was a reduction ad absurdum of all Perry's ambitions about treasure hunting. All the things about looking for diamonds and gold. And suddenly, all of this was reduced to this thing of running around looking for empty Coke bottles in ditches. I thought that was, to me, symbolically, that was the most interesting thing. That if either Perry or Dick had been like that little boy, nothing that it happened whatever happened, because the little boy's extraordinarily healthy, and his whole courtesy, his whole generosity, dividing the money and then walking out to the car with them and shaking their hands and wishing them a happy new year and knowing they were abandoning him and his old grandfather. I mean, he was a real person and a whole and complete person in a way that neither Perry nor Dick ever could have been.
Why did you place that scene just before Dick and Perry were captured?
I wanted you to see them summed up once and for all what the difference of their personalities was. And because it's the last time you ever see them together, and after that it becomes a different kind of story altogether. A tale of retribution. Karen, I wonder if you've seen these pictures of Alvin Dewey. You know, Alvin Dewey was the detective in charge of the case.
I was looking around.
Well, when I first went out to Kansas, the very first person I contacted, and this was about, just a week, scarcely a week after the murder, was Mr. Dewey. We became good friends and have been very good friends all these last 5.5 years, 6 years. And a few weeks ago, he and his wife, Marie, who's very much in the book too, came to New York to visit me. And it's the first time they'd ever been to New York. Of course, they wanted to see the city. And we went to the theaters, and I took them to Random House so they could see what a publishing house is like.
Well, it's great to have you here.
Marty, that's the title page, right?
Oh, yeah?
Oh!
No.
The open book right there. And then the title
Oh,
page.
those eyes.
Mm-hmm. I think that's
Oh,
stunning,
Truman,
right?
yes.
Hmm? Very good. You recognize those fellows, Alvin?
Yes, I do.
Don't you think that's a good likeness?
Well,
In his
taken
younger
from a-
days,
taken
his
from
younger
done
days.
from an old Avedon photograph.
How long ago, Truman?
That photograph?
But he's more handsome now than then.
And here we are at Tiffany.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Breakfast at. Breakfast at Tiffany. And I haven't had any breakfast, so we might as well go on in there. Right on in, right. We haven't got the money to buy anything, so.
Oh. You know, I would like to see the Statue of Liberty, gee.
Oh, yeah, they want to see the Statue of Liberty. Did I tell you about what Tiffany's finally did after all these years?
What did they finally do?
Everybody kept saying to me, did Tiffany send you a present for all of that publicity? And I didn't know they never sent me anything. So the other day, I suddenly got this phone call from one of the directors of Tiffany who said, well, that they decided that they'd read the paper where I had this new apartment and everything, and so they were going to send me an entire breakfast set for the apartment. I said, that's fine, as long as it's solid silver and preferably gold. In my book, The Muses Are Heard, this is, about taking the trip to Russia.
Yeah.
There's a scene with Leonard Lyons. He's sitting in the compartment of the train, and he's typing away like mad, and everybody, somebody says to him in the compartment, hey, Leonard, why don't you look at the scenery? He says, people don't get in my tax bracket looking at scenery.
How far away was the Statue of Liberty from here?
Well, it's right down there, dear. If it's just a little clearer, you can see it. Oh, my. But
The end of all.
the only reason you want to see the Statue of Liberty is because of the one in Garden City.
In front of the court. I want to see if the resemblance is really up there.
Well, that is real interesting.
Well, I'm glad I saw her.
Albin, you along with the other KBI agents, went out to Las Vegas when the two boys were caught out there, and they were sent to Kansas State Prison.
Business, death row.
And I used to visit them in death row there. About every 3 months. And they both used to write me twice a week, which was as much as the prison officials would allow them to write. Just as, dear Truman, while visiting a foreign country, one must always acquire a sleeping dictionary, a must article in everyone's travel retinue. Oh, dear. Dear Truman, received your postcard and recent letter from the picture, judging by the I would assume the weather to be extremely cold. I like cold weather only when I have a Macon to keep me warm. Oh, shouldn't have opened up this. These are just over a period of about a year, these letters, all from Perry and Dick. Oh, I think that was a sad thing to do. I've never looked at these in so long. Oh, God, save us all. Have belongings for you. He left me all his belongings. Please acknowledge by return wire when you expect to be here, Perry Smith. That was just 3 or 4 hours before he was executed. I was at the execution, Dick and Perry, but I tell the scene through Albert and Dewey's eyes. And moment when Perry's hanged, he opened his eyes and then saw Perry's feet tilted, dangling. And Dewey suddenly found himself recalling a casual encounter at the cemetery that for him more or less ended the Clutter case. Dewey looked at the gray stone inscribed with 4 names and the date of their deaths, November 15, 1959. Do you come here often? Once in a while. Gosh, the sun's strong. She covered her eyes with tinted glasses. Remember Bobby Rupp? He married a beautiful girl. So I heard. Colleen Whitehurst. She's really beautiful and very nice, too. Good for Bobby. And to tease her, Dewey added, but how about you? You must have a lot of beaux. Well, nothing serious, but that reminds me. Do you have the time? Oh, she cried when he told her it was past 4. I've got to run. But it was nice to have seen you, Mr. Dewey. And nice to have seen you, Sue. Good luck, he called after her as she disappeared down the path. A pretty girl in a hurry. Just such a young woman as Nancy might have been. Then, starting home, he walked toward the trees and under them, leaving behind him the big sky, the whisper of wind voices in the wind-bent wheat. The end. I knew that the book had to end with that scene. It just had to. You just moved in a page and a half from a man hanging on a gallows, strangling to death, suddenly into the most ordinary kind of life. People talking about boyfriends and college and whatnot, and it is sort of moving you back into real ordinary life.
It's a breeze blowing my silly locks. The aging poet.
This is NET, National Educational Television.